The Doors. Written by Johnny Fist. A door had been installed at the hospital entrance, an ordinary wooden door. Not the newest, but the local carpenter had done everything he could to make it look fresh and not too worn. Over the years its hinges loosened and it no longer closed properly, and unless you applied just the right amount of force, it could swing wide open on its own, letting in all the outside air, warm or cold, straight into the hospital building. Because of this, the door became a constant problem for visitors and patients alike. From time to time, they would bang into it, head, hand, or foot. And not lightly. They would break skin, bleed, and that blood would stay on the door. Naturally, they never blamed their own carelessness. They struck the door, took out their frustration on it, nearly tried to rip it off. This made the hinges loosen further, and the door's appearance grew even more wretched. Its entire edge turned almost completely brown. Over the years, the blood of different people, men and women, old and young, soaked into the door, and the door, already not particularly attractive, became even less pleasant to touch. So the years passed, many decades even, and eventually the hospital was shut down and the building was forgotten for decades. The walls partially collapsed, everything decayed, the abandoned building turned into a wreck. The doors too. They had nearly fallen off their hinges and were hanging on the last screw. They were saturated with age, blood, and time. No one would have dared touch them if the hospital was still operating. But something happened. In all the places where blood had soaked into the wood, something began to grow over the years. Perhaps moss, perhaps something else. And whatever it was, it kept spreading. After 8.5 years, on the upper edge of the door, exactly where people had struck it most often, an eye appeared. A small brown eye looking around. It never closed, never slept. It was always searching for something. And lower down, near the handle, 2 fingers emerged, twitching back and forth. The eye was always watching, and the fingers were always moving. A strange phenomenon. But there it was. The area grew over with trees through the years and became a popular place for mushroom pickers. The house decayed even more, but the door, now with its eye and fingers, continued to stand where it always had, in the same position, facing east, and the eye constantly scanned the distance for someone. One day, a few families were walking through the area. It was autumn, slightly damp and overcast. They picked mushrooms and enjoyed the forest. With them was their 8-year-old daughter, happily wandering with her basket, searching for mushrooms. She drifted a bit to the side when she saw berries on a bush. Step by step, she strayed further from the main group of mushroom pickers and wandered a little westward. There she saw a small house standing apart. Something inside it reflected light. She looked around and, full of curiosity, walked toward it. When she was about 10 meters away, her gaze locked with the eye on the door's edge. It stared at her without blinking. She stared back. Terror filled her, and she wanted to scream, but her breath froze. She couldn't utter a sound. She only looked at the eye. One of the fingers beckoned her with a slow, smooth motion. She felt her body stop responding to her will. Tears streamed down her cheeks in fear, but she still couldn't speak. Her parents yelled and searched for her, but she couldn't answer their calls. She walked slowly toward the eye. The finger beckoned her gently. She moved closer and closer. She couldn't fight the force pulling her in. She came right up to the door and looked up at the eye. The finger stopped beckoning. It froze, and only then did the eye blink. The girl didn't understand what kind of force this was, but the moment the eye blinked, she slammed her head into the door with all her strength. Blood trickled from her forehead. She cried silently. She was terrified and in pain. The eye blinked again, and she struck her head against the door even harder. Her blood dripped onto the edge and was instantly absorbed. The eye widened as if energized. Her entire forehead was bloody, her eyes filled with blood. Her parents' voices sounded distant, but she no longer controlled herself. The eye shifted its gaze back to the girl and blinked frantically. The girl smashed her head into the door again and again with renewed force until she cracked her skull and collapsed lifeless to the ground. Her blood was on the door. It soaked in even faster this time, and the eye and fingers seemed to shudder in ecstasy. The surge of new blood gave the door a fresh jolt of life. Voices approached. People were coming. They saw the girl lying there and ran to her. The eye closed, and the fingers flattened tight against the wood so as not to be noticed. The parents were horrified by what they found. Screams and hysteria echoed through the forest. Everyone cried out in terror together. She was dead. Her blood was nowhere visible on the door. They were convinced someone living, someone made of flesh and blood, had killed their daughter. Screams, panic, running through the woods. None of it led anywhere. After several days of searches, visits from police and dogs, no one found anything. The forest fell silent again. The eye opened. It looked around. It felt something had changed. Another eye had appeared beside it. They stared at each other. If there had been a mouth as well, one might have seen a faint smirk. But even without it, the eyes made it clear. What had happened was magnificent. Together they looked down, where 3 fingers began to stir. Yes, another finger had appeared. All it needed was fresh blood for the door to grow. It was glorious. Now one eye looked east and the other northeast. Soon someone else would surely come. They needed fresh blood. Her blood had been so young and so delicious. They would wait. It had waited so long. It would wait again.